Hi, I'm Brian O'Driscoll, a Senior Advisor with Teneo, the global CEO advisory firm. I'm delighted to welcome you along to episode 1 of the Teneo Leadership Series. At Teneo, our teams all over the world are advising CEOs and boards on the critical issues affecting business. In this series, I'll be sitting down with senior leaders to discuss the issues and opportunities for business, reflect on their career journeys, and garner their insights across a wide range of topics. Today, I'm joined by Gary McGann, the former CEO of Lingus and Smurfit Kappa, now Smurfit WestRock, and the current chair of Teneo Ireland's advisory board. In our conversation, Gary reflects on key moments in his career, from his time at Lingus in the 1990s to being at the helm of Smurfit Kappa through the 2008 financial crisis. We talk about his approach to leadership, issues facing business right now, and the cultural differences he encountered across organizations, and why the reputation of a company is critical. Gary, thank you so much for joining me today to give me some insights into an illustrious career, shall we say, over multiple decades. But before we get into that, I know that you're involved in a number of different businesses at the moment. Give us a sense around what's taking up most of your time now and some of the roles you're involved in.
Thanks, Ryan. Great to be here. It's kind of weird to be on the other end. I normally expect you to be interviewed rather than me. So multiple decades is probably right. Makes me feel a bit old, but anyway. So I'm still very active. As you know, I chair the Irish Advisory Board for Teneo, and like yourself, I'm a senior advisor internationally. I chair a Polish public company. It's a $10 billion company in the online retailing. So an equivalent to Amazon / eBay. Quoted on the Warsaw Stock Exchange. And I chair CIS Group, who are now Ireland, UK and Europe. And I chair a small family development company called the O'Reillys, who built Charlemont Square, which is up the road here, probably one of the finest buildings in Dublin, if I say so myself. And then I'm also a venture partner with Middlegame Venture, which is a small fintech venture capital company. And then to try and get the back door into heaven, I chair the Ireland Funds and I'm on the board of Bernardo's. So good news is my wife didn't invite me home and I haven't gone home.
The appetite certainly hasn't rescinded in any shape or form. It hasn't lessened. Where's the drive come from now?
I was a bad golfer. I was a good golfer once, and then I started getting bad, so I stopped playing golf. And to be honest with you, I don't do nothing well. I do a lot of things badly, but I don't do nothing well. And I have this kind of theory that the brain is a muscle like every other muscle. I never played bridge. I'm not taking up Sudoku, so the alternative would work. It kind of comes down to that.
Let's get into it a little bit. Obviously, you know, you've held some hugely important leadership positions. It's an area that I've got a real passion for because, in truth, I never saw myself as being a leader. Someone identified something in me that I didn't believe that I possessed. So, in all of the roles that you've had over the course of your career, was it something that kind of came naturally to you? Did you feel as though I'm a ready-made leader, or was it a learned skill?
Yeah, no, I wasn't a ready-made leader. I've watched the old clips of you over the weekend just to remind myself. So when I was at the age that you were a leader, I wasn't doing great leadership things, I can assure you. So mine was very much learnt by working for and watching great people, and trying to understand what the heck they were doing that actually made them a leader. And as I look back, it was staring me in the face because they were doing it to me and for me, and many others like me. And so, no, it was very much an acquired skill, if it's a skill, or certain. And I was lucky. I might never have been a leader. If I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, I'd probably be still part of the pack. Nothing wrong with that, but I just got lucky.
How lucky?
I suppose, my daughters, I've only daughters, and they claimed when I was younger that I couldn't hold down a job. So I didn't stay in any job for years and years and years. And so I tended to move to a new role, but the organization was at a point in time where opportunities were beginning to open up. and I kind of moved to the right type of organizations. I can tell you, in terms of planning, I moved wherever anybody would give me a job. That was a slightly higher salary. I was married at 21, just 22. So I had 3 small kids by the age of 27, 28. So I needed money. So it's a great driver. Money and fear, I reckon, are the 2 things that drove me.
And leadership is such an evolutionary piece. The person you are now, I'm sure you look back at your leadership style in your 40s and 50s and parts of it would be unrecognizable. How has that changed over the course of time?
Yeah, I cringe when I look back, to be honest with you.
We all do, don't we? We all do.
My first boss in private industry was a man called Vincent Daly, who ran Ericsson in Ireland and influenced Ericsson internationally. And I was 26 or so when I got my first management role as assistant financial controller. And at the end of the following year, he called me in and said, "We've had a great year and you've earned 100% bonus and I'm going to give you 50%. And I said, "I don't understand, Mr. Daly." He said, "Well, you've achieved all the goals, but," he said, "the trail of destruction you've left behind." He said, "I can't afford to keep hiring new people." And I remember that was the great salary lesson. I literally was so focused on me and what I was trying to do. I actually thought that leadership was about doing and showing and giving example, as distinct from actually having regard to how do you mobilize the rest of the team and how do you play to people's strengths and stuff that is second nature to you.
And so in your role as CEO, be it with Aer Lingus or with Smurfit Kappa, would you have always had one eye on the next generation of leadership coming through, and how do you stimulate that? Or did you feel as though that's not my role remit, that's the onus is on them to show enough to actually elevate themselves into a leadership position?
I think it's a bit of both. I mean, in terms of the one thing I found as I climbed up the ladder, or crawled up the ladder more particularly, was you end up doing less and enabling more. It's kind of, the analogy I tend to use is when I kind of got into private enterprise, because I started life as a civil servant for 6 or 7 years. And it's only when I look back now, I mean, it's so chalk and cheese. So getting into private enterprise was just exhilarating. But when I got my first role, I kind of thought about it as I got into the orchestra. And then as I went up the ladder, I kind of got to play in the front row of the orchestra. And then you become first violin, and before you know it, you're the orchestra leader. And CEO is a bit like an orchestra leader. It's about making great music, difficult music, because if it's easy, everybody is doing it. And getting people to play in harmony and play to their strengths and do things when they can and should, and then be there for them when they don't. So, but you can't develop talent if it doesn't present itself. So if you're running a big company, people need to meet you halfway. They need to kind of show up and give you some signals. But equally, we need to be looking for it. And so I spent most of my time on the road in all the countries we operate in, because the talent wasn't sitting in Dublin or London or New York. It was sitting everywhere, if you could find it.
So as the conductor, are there specific core traits that are kind of non-negotiables in leaders, in CEOs?
I think courage. I honestly believe the scars of the financial crisis, many people who have been contemporaries of mine, we often talk about it. Like for a couple of years afterwards, the real victim of the financial crisis, apart from the horror it caused for some people, was the diminution of courage and the fear of screwing it up again, quite frankly. So I think courage, and I think sometimes taking the calculated risk. I mean, business, every board in a business kind of gets exercised, I think, at times about risk appetite. And I've yet to get anybody to find for me how you tell an organization what the risk appetite is. You can tell them the no-nos, but it's the do-dos is the challenge. And so taking calculated risks and owning them and being prepared to live with them and back the team that actually follow you on it. So I think great leaders have the backs of the team, but that doesn't mean that they cover off people who can't deliver. So it's having the team, making sure you're constantly trying to keep that team in place, the right team, but then basically very much backing them.
Well, take us back to that need for courage in the aftermath of the financial crisis in 2008. You're CEO of Smurfit Kappa. What's that time like?
Between 2007 and 2011, if I ever get to write my own epitaph, these will be my annus horribilis. In 2007, it's writ large on the back of my brain. In 2007, my first granddaughter was born, and this was exhilaration beyond belief. And my best friend died, Paddy Wright. I got Businessman of the Year in Business and Finance. And then we took Smurfit Kappa public again, and very successfully. And then in 2008, somebody switched off the lights. So we launched Smurfit Kappa at €16.50 in March 2007. And by the middle of 2008, it was north of 21. And by the end of 2008, it was €1.09. And the great achievement was I didn't get sacked. And the generosity of my chairman, I didn't get sacked. I was on the Anglo boards. Sorry, that was the other piece I'm missing, of course. Anglo was an absolute disaster. And we all that were involved in it, there's no hiding place. There may be mitigations, but there's no hiding place. And at the time, I was on the board of United Drug. I was chairman of Dublin Airport Authority, and obviously I was CEO of Smurfit Kappa. And I remember I went three, in my CEO case, the chairman, and the other two cases, the chairman, well, the minister. And I offered my resignation to all three. And the government were the only ones who accepted it. Which, to be fair, I think they were right. I think it was the right answer. But so when you put all that together, it was just one of those times. But it was a great time because we came out of it.
Throughout that period, there had to have been some incredibly challenging and difficult decisions for you to make. How do you handle difficult decisions? Have you got a process? Are you a gut feel sort of person? I think ultimately I am. I've been very lucky, and as I've said this to you earlier, and I mean, I genuinely believe it. I think I suspect you have your own version of it, but I think anyone who tells you they've been successful without luck is kind of either self-delusional or else is Jesus Christ. It's probably one or the other. He didn't bend up too well for a while too. But I think I tend to try and put a lot of hard yards into content, kind of what are we looking at, etc. But then when it comes to judgment, I'm fairly instinctive. And so the share price at €1.09, the shareholders that invested at €16.50, never mind at 22, were absolutely, some of them were brilliant. A lot of American ones were brilliant, actually, because America understands the company was in rude health. The balance sheet was in good shape. We had a lot of debt, but we were well on top of it. And so people understood in some cases, in other cases they didn't. But the role of a CEO in a public company is to run the company, not to run the shareholder base. They'll run themselves. They'll either run you out of town, put somebody else in, but so be it. That's the price you pay. And so we went back to first principles. And in those days, I remember everybody stopped everything discretionary, variable expenditure of any sort. People's bonuses were frozen, all sorts of things. We did the opposite. We actually said we will have two major conferences where we get the top 100 and then the top 200. I remember Smurfit at that stage was about 35,000 people. So these are the people running the business, not really me. Got them all together for 2 days at a time, laid out literally what the realities were, the projections were, what the market was saying, what the pressures were. Said, so what do we think we do? And we broke into breakout groups. And I literally tapped into what I knew instinctively was probably very bright people. But I'd never really tested it to the extent of actually saying, guys, we're on the line here. And slowly but surely, we came up with a plan, including people volunteering no capital investment for 2 years, and they were crying out for it, but they knew they could do without it. People who did all sorts of amazing things. Some did very negative, amazing things, but they were tiny. And it brought home to me the essence of the power of the team versus the power of the individuals or the small team. And also, a second thing that I should have realized, and I went back to my Vincent Daly story, I treated them like adults. I remember people leaving that conference like with serious challenges and serious world and saying, thank you for trusting us. I said to myself, wow, didn't see that one coming, but
there you go.
By the time you exited Smurfit Kappa, what did that share price get back to?
32.
There you go.
Job done. God.
If you were starting out a business today, what would you say? You know, many people ask about what would you say to your younger self, irrespective of what sector they were involved in.
I'd say first of all, get a couple of people of like-minded passion. If I never understand people taking directorships or any roles in companies if they don't like the sector, or it's kind of it's another notch on the belt rather than I'm really keen on this. This is something I don't know anything about. I really want to learn. I'm keen to see can I add value. If you don't have that spark, and I mean, I'm telling somebody who understands this better than I do. But so I'd start with that. And secondly, no matter how brilliant people are, talking to yourself and trying to convince yourself about things is not as fruitful as actually talking to somebody who's actually going to tell you the truth, for good and for bad. So I surround myself with a number of, particularly for startups, a couple of small good people, but literally people, not so much for what their skills are, albeit that's important. The third thing is, I'd say to myself, and I thought I knew this, but it grows on you with age. Actually admit to yourself where you have the weaknesses and complement them, because there's nothing worse than actually saying, I can be good at everything, because truth be told, you can't.
I was lucky in that regard because I had a huge amount of holes to fill, as a 23-year-old. So I didn't have any choice in the matter, and so I do see it, within reason as a strength of understanding where your blind spot is, or to make sure that there's people there to supplement your deficiencies as you are given time to work on them. So on that note, is there a leader out there that you really admire now, or when you were beginning your career, is there someone that you look to?
There are loads of them, Brian. I mean, I categorize them kind of in groups, and this, I'm really dating myself now, but I will. So without the Irish state having public servants that were really not just smart and intellectually and academically smart, but courageous and ambitious for the country. So I'm thinking, the obvious ones people quote are T.K. Whitaker, etc. But I worked out of the Department of Industry and Commerce with semi-states, and the guy called J.C.B. McCarthy, he was a single man, spent his life traveling the world doing bilateral agreements for Ireland. Nobody has ever heard of him. Joe Holloway, another guy. So there were people like that. There was O'Higgins. IFSC would never happen without O'Higgins. Northern Ireland peace talks. Paddy Teehan was a senior civil servant who worked endlessly for that. So I think they were one. I think the second thing was that moved on then when we opened up the economy, the people who took real chances. And you never hear of Tom Roach, but Tom Roach is CRH. Michael Smurfit, Tony O'Reilly. Michael Smurfit and Tom Roach, because they built businesses from nothing. Dennis Brosnan took a small co-op in the southwest of the country and made a world player out of it. And even today, Michael O'Leary. Michael O'Leary is outstanding. He broke my heart when I was running Aer Lingus. He's outstanding. The man is uniquely capable. And even the John Climax set up Icon. So we've in five sectors. Ireland has the world leader in 5 sectors, and they're all different sectors from an island this size. Mm-hmm. So it's not hard to be admiring of these people. And then the people, I worked with David Dand, who built Bailey's. I worked with Bernie Cahill, who was just an amazing guy, and he was the troubleshooter for the Irish government in civil and semi-state. So he was in Green Corps when they went pear-shaped for a while, and he was in Aer Lingus. He brought me into Aer Lingus. So and then, I had Michael Smurfit was just an amazing guy to work with.
You've been at the coal face of business for a number of years, and Teneo are obviously globally supporting a huge amount of businesses here in Ireland and right across the world. What are the business leaders of the world that you have interactions with saying to you right now?
As a preamble to that, isn't it amazing to think that a company advising the companies that we do in Teneo is headed by a guy from Loughrea, where my mother was born. So Paul Cleary, whom I'd never met, is from Loughrea, County Galway. And the first time I spoke to him was when I was speaking to him about Teneo. And I said to him, how could that be? And he said, how could that be? So what are companies thinking about? I think it's amazing. In the last, if we had any number of the events we've had in the last 5 years, last 3 years, 20 years ago, the stock market would be in the toilet, oil prices would be through the roof, and capital investment of any sort would be killed. There would be a massive recession. And it could be worse than that. It could be anything derived from a recession, whether it's stagflation, etc. And yet, because the political world has been fairly volatile and unpredictable, never as unpredictable as currently, which is a shocking time at the moment for everybody. And yet business has got on with its business. And while the top 7 or 8 stocks are kind of driving the whole, certainly the Western world stock markets, but the underlying business behind them are pushing on and driving innovation and so on. So what business loves, well, everybody that will talk to you about business will say certainty. They need as much certainty as possible. And yet business is thriving in utter uncertainty. So there's a maturing, I think, of the business world. Now, that's not to say that if the fundamentals ultimately stop consumers consuming, because everything ends up ultimately as a consumable. Then when that turns down, it's hard to crank it up again. But I don't see it happening. I certainly see a slowdown. I mean, you can see it already in capital investments, people pressing the pause button, people thinking twice, cutting once, understandably, but not dramatically.